There is a kind of exhaustion that does not show up in your body first. It does not begin in your muscles or your sleep or your schedule. It begins somewhere deeper, somewhere harder to locate, like a slow leak inside your identity. You wake up and nothing is obviously wrong, and yet everything feels heavier than it should. Conversations feel like work, decisions feel like weight, even rest feels incomplete, like you are pausing something rather than recovering from it. And the most unsettling part is this: if someone asked you to explain exactly what is wrong, you would struggle to give them a clean answer. Not because nothing is wrong, but because what is wrong is not visible in the usual ways. So you do what most people do. You assume it must be burnout. You assume you need more discipline, better habits, cleaner routines. You try to fix it the way the world has taught you to fix everything, by adding more structure, more effort, more control. You tell yourself that if you can just organize your life well enough, if you can just optimize your time and push through the fog, eventually the feeling will go away. But it doesn't. It lingers, quiet, persistent, unimpressed by your attempts to outrun it. Because this exhaustion is not coming from what you are doing. It is coming from what you are tolerating. Most people never consider this. They think exhaustion is the result of action, of doing too much, of carrying too many responsibilities. But there is another form of exhaustion that comes from something far more subtle and far more dangerous. It comes from the constant, invisible friction between who you are and what you allow. Every time you say yes when something in you meant no. Every time you stay quiet when clarity was trying to speak. Every time you adjust yourself to maintain peace instead of maintaining truth. These moments seem small when they happen, almost insignificant, but they accumulate. And what they accumulate into is depletion. You are not just living your life, you are constantly editing yourself inside it. And editing yourself is expensive. It requires energy to monitor your words before you speak them. It requires energy to soften your reactions so they are more acceptable. It requires energy to ignore what you see when it makes other people uncomfortable. Over time, this constant internal management becomes your default state. You are no longer just present in your life. You are managing your presence in your life. And that is where the exhaustion begins to take shape. Because you were never designed to live like that. There is a version of you that does not second-guess every thought. A version of you that does not need to rehearse conversations before they happen. A version of you that does not walk into a room already calculating how to be received. That version still exists, but it has been buried under years of adaptation. Years of learning what is acceptable. Years of being rewarded for being easy to deal with and quietly corrected for being too much, too direct, too honest, too aware. So you learn something, not consciously, but through repetition. You learn that your unfiltered self creates friction. And instead of questioning the environments that required that adaptation, you questioned yourself. That is the dark reason behind your exhaustion. Not that you are doing too much, but that you are not allowed in too many areas of your life to simply be. Look closely at the moments when you feel most drained. It is rarely after something physically demanding. It is after something socially or psychologically demanding. A conversation where you had to hold back what you really thought. A situation where you had to pretend not to notice something obvious. A dynamic where you understood more than you were allowed to acknowledge. These are the moments that cost you the most, not because they are dramatic, but because they require you to split yourself. Part of you sees clearly. The other part of you is forced to act like you don't. That split is where your energy goes, and the longer you live like that, the more normal it feels, until one day you wake up and you are just tired, not in a way that sleep fixes, not in a way that a vacation resets, but in a way that makes everything feel slightly pointless, slightly disconnected, slightly off. This is not weakness. This is not laziness. This is not even traditional burnout. This is misalignment sustained over time. There is something else happening beneath the surface that most people never articulate. When you constantly override your own perception to maintain harmony, you begin to lose trust in it. Not all at once, slowly, quietly. You start second-guessing things you once saw clearly. You begin asking others for confirmation about decisions you already understand. You hesitate where you used to move with certainty. And this hesitation creates another layer of exhaustion. Because now, you are not just managing your behavior, you are managing your own clarity. And managing clarity is one of the most draining things a person can do. Think about how much energy it takes to doubt yourself in real time. To feel something and then immediately question whether you are allowed to feel it. To see something and then convince yourself you might be overthinking it. This constant internal negotiation erodes something fundamental. It erodes your sense of authority over your own experience. And once that authority is weakened, everything becomes heavier. Decisions take longer. Interactions feel riskier. Silence becomes loaded. You start moving through life with a kind of quiet caution, always adjusting, always calibrating, always making sure you are not stepping outside the invisible lines that have been drawn around you. But those lines were never meant to protect you. They were meant to contain you, and containment over time turns into suffocation. This is why you can be doing all the right things on paper and still feel completely drained. Because the problem is not visible in your routine. It is embedded in your relationships, your environment, your patterns of response. It is built into the way you have learned to operate in order to be accepted. And acceptance, when it comes at the cost of self-abandonment, is one of the most expensive trades you can make. There is a moment, though, that comes for people who have lived like this long enough. It does not arrive loudly. It does not announce itself as a breakthrough. It shows up as a quiet refusal, a subtle shift, a point where something in you simply decides, without explanation, that you can no longer keep doing this the same way. You become less willing to explain yourself, less interested in overextending, less tolerant of conversations that go nowhere, less available for dynamics that require you to shrink. And at first, this shift can feel confusing, even uncomfortable, because it disrupts patterns that have existed for years. People may notice, they may question it, they may try to pull you back into the version of you they are familiar with. But something important is happening in that moment. You are beginning to conserve your energy instead of leaking it. And conservation is the first step toward clarity. When you stop spending energy on unnecessary explanations, on forced interactions, on maintaining versions of yourself that no longer fit, something starts to return. Slowly, quietly, your thoughts become sharper. Your decisions become cleaner. Your presence becomes heavier, not in a burdened way, but in a grounded way. You start to feel like yourself again. Not the edited version, not the managed version, the real one. And with that return comes something else. A kind of calm, not the fragile calm that depends on everything going smoothly, but a deeper, more stable calm that comes from no longer being in conflict with yourself. You are not constantly negotiating your own reality anymore. You are not suppressing what you see or feel in order to maintain external harmony. You are simply aligned. And alignment removes friction, which removes exhaustion. It does not mean people suddenly understand you. It does not mean every situation becomes comfortable. What it means is that you are no longer the source of your own depletion. You are no longer working against yourself in order to function. And that changes everything, because once you stop leaking energy through self-suppression, you realize something that most people never fully grasp. You are never actually lacking energy. You are losing it. Losing it in conversations that required you to be less than you are. Losing it in relationships that depended on your silence. Losing it in environments that rewarded your compliance and punished your clarity. The exhaustion you could not explain was never random. It was specific. It was patterned. And once you see the pattern, you cannot unsee it. From that point forward, your life becomes less about adding more and more about removing what drains you. Not dramatically, not loudly, quietly, intentionally. You stop engaging in things that cost more than they return. You become selective with your time, your attention, your presence. And in that selectivity, your energy stabilizes. Your clarity sharpens. Your life simplifies. You are no longer trying to be everything for everyone. You are no longer trying to fit into spaces that require you to fragment yourself. You are no longer confusing acceptance with alignment. You are simply operating from a place that is real. And reality, when you stop resisting it, is far less exhausting than performance. So if you have been feeling that quiet, persistent exhaustion, the kind you cannot fully explain, the kind that lingers even when everything seems fine, understand this. There is nothing wrong with you. but there may be something deeply wrong with what you have been tolerating. And the moment you begin to remove what is misaligned, even in small ways, even without announcing it, even without fully understanding it yet, something will start to shift. Not all at once, but enough to notice, enough to feel, enough to remind you that the version of you that is clear, grounded, and fully alive was never gone. It was just buried under everything you thought you had to be. And now, quietly, without permission, without explanation, you are starting to uncover it again. And that changes the trajectory of everything that comes next. If this spoke to something in you that you couldn't quite put into words, don't ignore it. Most people hear something like this, feel it for a moment, and then go right back to the patterns that are draining them. Don't be most people. Take what you've just understood and apply it quietly. No announcements, no explanations, just change. And if you're serious about becoming sharper, more grounded, and impossible to drain, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. And check the link in the description.